mics are open. We're going to pause and try to catch some of this. As he talks with Congresswoman Waters, Senator Reid.
Watch out for that.
The veteran Democrat Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut having something of an intense fist bump moment with the president. It's by now a cliche, but this is truly where Joe Biden is the most at home. In this, and especially the neighboring Senate chamber, among pals, among elected officials. 36 years is a tough habit to break, and then that was followed by 8 years presiding over the Senate as vice president, meeting the new sergeant at arms. After 4 years of a monotone shout, it was bracing to hear a speech delivered at times by a whisper. His use of voice modulation was rather extraordinary given the television era, and it served as cover at times for unspooling an ambition in this speech that was Rooseveltian in size and scope. He treated the sparse crowd with a kind of intimacy in the chamber that may very well have translated to the television audience at home. At his best, he reminded America what Americans are capable of, something presidents do, something presidents say. In the midst of what is, by any standard, a huge vaccine victory, he couldn't resist saying there's no wall high enough to keep out the pandemic. But his last line, now that we've lost the ability to hear him in the crowd, we are the United States of America. There is nothing beyond our capacity, nothing we can't do if we do it together. That's an easy one. It's always been true. We just haven't heard it in a while, and right now, a good many folks need to hear it. Pat Leahy, senior serving member of the U.S. Senate, Democratic side. Rachel, over to you and our friends.
Brian, thank you. It's telling and I think interesting in its own right that the president made tracks when he came into the chamber. That is often something in normal times that takes a very long time for the president to make it down that aisle, with members of Congress crowding the aisle, wanting to be seen with the president. There have been times when the president at that moment signs things or otherwise poses with members on their way in. In this case, walking in, that was not what President Biden wanted to do. But now that it is done, and the opportunity is there for him to, as we've seen in these last few minutes, ask, how's your mom? Tell her I said hi. Talk to individual members of the United States Senate, even the House, showing that he knows them. Rosa, when he had that moment with Rosa DeLauro, I had to think that that moment is about the child tax credit, which has been her life's work as a longstanding member of Congress from Connecticut to get that child tax credit in place, which will have a massive effect on the family finances of working families all over the country. If you have kids, you're going to start getting checks from the government this summer, every month, as a tax credit for having kids in this country. Rosa DeLauro made that happen. The president tonight promised that he will do his best to get that made extended so that it's not just part of the temporary COVID relief bill, but that it lasts, as he said tonight, until 2025. There was some news tonight, the president, I think, appearing to tell, it was a little unclear, but I think he was saying that Vice President Harris will be helming the effort to establish high-speed broadband nationwide. He talked about an ARPA, Advanced Research Project for Health, which would be an extension of the sort of cancer moonshot that he helmed during the Obama administration. See the president there with the Republican senator. That's Rob Portman.
Portman, who resigned, who is not running for re-election, and Ryan announced to run for a seat.
There will be lines that stand out from this speech, both for history and for their impact. When he said, and we should know, the speech was about 50-50 ad lib and prepared remarks. But when he said, go get vaccinated, America, go and get the vaccination. They are available. You are eligible now. And the room erupted from that. Hard to make it more clear than that when he said white supremacy is terrorism. It's not exactly the way that it was written in his prepared remarks. He ad-libbed to add to those remarks, making that incredibly powerful statement. When he said to all the transgender Americans watching at home, especially the young people who are so brave, I want you to know that your president has your back. That will land like a proverbial bomb on LGBTQ communities across America. It's huge to have the president not just sort of name check you, but put it in those terms and that sort of in those sort of personal guarantee of terms. I think that'll be a very powerful moment for all the scope and all of the policy that he talked tonight. That one's going to stick.
You know, and I think you
Yeah, I got
pulling
that back
the
right with
thread
me
that
too.
was so brilliantly woven through this speech. I mean, the speech was crafted obviously by him and his staff, and every ad-lib line was him. And there's one ad-lib line I wrote down. He said, "I don't want to get confrontational with you." It was around gun control.
Mm-hmm.
His connections to the people in this room, I'm not even sure if all of them are deserving of them, but he does not care. He gives to them the benefit of the doubt, the benefit of his goodwill. I thought it would be a hard speech to make optimistic. He did. And I, with my black Sharpie, I think I wrote all the way through the table this whole section about the insurrection. And,
Yeah.
and I think that to come out of a section about our enemies, the autocrats who wish to see our democratic experiment fail, will not win. When you come out of that darkness of what happened in that chamber was so remarkable. I have to say one other thing. I was thinking of the two people who have shaped him so much who weren't in the room. His son, Beau Biden, that was another ad-lib line when he was talking about the commitment to cancer research. And his friend John McCain, who made one of the bookends to this speech when he talked about ideologies that would end up in the ash heap of history. I think he's trying to put America's dark days behind us in that same ash heap of history.
America's adversaries, the autocrats of the world, are betting that our democracy cannot deliver. They believe we're too full of anger and division and rage. They look at the images of the mob that assaulted this Capitol as proof that the sun is setting on American democracy. They are wrong. And we have to prove them wrong. We have to prove democracy still works.
Yeah, I mean, the part where he said, I spent a lot of time with President Xi, and these autocrats are convinced that democracies, by definition, can't accomplish things because there's too much division. I have to go to one line that wasn't ad-libbed. This was at the end when he did say, our Constitution opens with "we the people," and it's time that we remember that the people and the government are us, which I think is an important. It was, in this sort of place that had to be evacuated because of an insurrection. I feel like government came back and occupied it. And Biden occupied it with a kind of politics that is bread and butter, real working class politics. This was working class Joe. And he was just asking the question, are we still capable of doing big things together? Like, are we so broken as a society that we can't do big things like Eisenhower did with the, traversing the country with the railroads, et cetera? It was an optimistic speech because it was about things the government can deliver to you that are specific, that you can feel, that you can see, that are visceral, whether it's emotional, as you said, with trans kids feeling that the government, it isn't against them, or whether it's African Americans hearing the president say, no, I get it. I understand that the real terrorism is this white nationalism that threatens your vote and threatens your ability to be full citizens, or just saying, look, we can build stuff. Yeah, we can still do that. And I thought he does a kind of nostalgia. Trump did a different kind of nostalgia that was dark. His kind of nostalgia is saying, we're still capable of doing big things and that we can be bigger than this messiness, and I think it was important for people to hear that. I feel like this speech with working class, and it's not just working class white voters, the Democrats have issues with working class black and brown voters too. Because they're saying, am I going to be able to compete if I don't have a college degree? Am I going to be able to get a decent job anymore? Am I going to be competing with workers in low-wage countries? And are my jobs going to get exported? That actually kind of dings with black and brown voters too. Sure. So working class in general, he's saying, yeah, we are going to take care of you. We're going
When
to
he
make sure
says,
you get a job.
they're talking about millions of jobs and millions of
Yeah.
jobs. He says, if you are hearing this right now and you are wondering whether that is about you, let me talk to you at home and let you know that the vast majority of these jobs, you do not need your college degree.
That's
you
right.
do not need even an associate's degree. This is about the working class. This is about the middle class. And this is about good, well-paying jobs, building stuff that's going to make America a better place and help us compete competitively. And that's it's an economic populism that I think a lot of Democrats have been wanting to hear from the top levels of the party for quite some time. But to pair that with what you're talking about, Nicole, in terms of that darkness and light, we have stared into an abyss of insurrection and autocracy, of pandemic and pain, and we the people did not flinch. At the very moment our adversaries were certain we would pull apart and fail, we came together. And it's the high and the low. It's him talking about where we've been pretty unflinchingly.
Well, and it's him taking really the inverse view of the country as the previous guy. He saw
American carnage.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean that president's first speech to the country was American carnage, delivered obviously at his inauguration, but at the beginning, I thought that it would be a challenge to balance the clarity, the clear-eyed nature of what this threat was with this forward-looking view, but every page, and we have the pages, but every couple minutes is just littered with extensions and generosities to Republicans. If you don't pass my bill, send me something. He gave a shout out to the Republican, very pared down, sort of roads and bridges approach to infrastructure that we talked
Let's
about.
get to work, he said.
With Secretary Pete. That's fine. That's he is willing to cast in good faith anything from the Republicans, and it brings into sharp relief what they're doing. They have redefined with the public bipartisanship to mean things that have bipartisan support in the country. They are the first White House to make that they have redefined bipartisanship successful for the first time, and he used it, I thought, to the most effect tonight around the gun control debate, because he didn't just put the 85% of all Americans who support all of the things that is in their proposal, he put gun owners in it. And that's always been what I thought should have cross-pressured the NRA. It never did. He used that to great effect.
Can we talk about the things that we were talking about in the background? We couldn't see a lot of what the Republicans were standing up and cheering for, but he put some things out there that would be very hard for them to say they don't like. He said, we cut child poverty. It didn't look like anybody really stood up. He said, we're going to build, millions of American jobs. I don't know if they stood up, but he's presenting a platform that is so basic. It's just sort of basic jobs politics, that it's going to be difficult. I do have to say that a lot of what he said, President Obama said, but because Joe Biden is Joe Biden, he's an older white guy, it comes across differently to the country, to the people who are the most triggered by people like Obama. It doesn't come across as super academic or Harvardian or whatever it is, or it's not a black guy, right? So I think I understand every time he speaks why Donald Trump was afraid of him, why he feared that guy being the nominee, because that is a very difficult politics to oppose.
We're about 1 minute or perhaps less out from the Republican response from South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. Any thoughts from you before we hear from him in terms of him being the choice for this response?
He is now at the table negotiating police reform, which was one of the centerpieces of tonight's address.
Yeah, and he's, from what folks that I'm talking with in South Carolina, even Democrats who know Tim Scott and who oppose him on lots of policies, do believe he is sincere and believe that he sees this as a chance to make his mark, something that he hadn't done up to now.
Brian, over to you.
And with that, the clock, by the way, started when Joe Biden exited the chamber. That is the exact 5-minute warning to the start of the response. As we've been saying, it will be Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. Let's go to that now.
Good evening. I'm Senator Tim Scott from the great state of South Carolina. We just heard President Biden's first address to Congress. Our president seems like a good man. His speech was full of good words, but President Biden promised you a specific kind of leadership. He promised to unite a nation, to lower the temperature, to govern for all Americans, no matter how we voted. This was the pitch. You just heard it again. But our nation is starving for more than empty platitudes. We need policies and progress that brings us closer together. But 3 months in, the actions of the president and his party are pulling us further and further apart. I won't waste your time with finger pointing or partisan bickering. You can get that on TV anytime you want. I want to have an honest conversation.